we had a liberal in the audience.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring that up. I actually talked with him a little bit. He's running in the 97th district. He's an engineer.
His name's George Schaefer.
Lived out in California for a little bit. He brought up the usual Democratic tropes of, why are Republicans pro-life, but they don't care about the children after they're born and corporations and we're greedy. But I admire him for coming out to a conservative event and listening. And I asked him point blank, did you learn anything? And he hesitated and didn't want to admit it, but actually said, yes, he did learn some things. So we know that we have liberals listening in the audience. Some have called in. Some now come to our events. We appreciate your point of view, even though we don't agree with it. We try to be civil here, and I think folks calling in and coming to our events proves that.
This may be a coincidence, but as I always tell you, I don't believe in coincidences, I only believe in connections. Chris, we got a stack of note cards handed us to us last night. We did not get through, I think maybe we got through about half of them. Thank you to everybody for your questions. But Chris, I kept this one note card. I'm not going to say necessarily that this was completed by the one Democrat. Well, may have been more than one Democrat in the audience, but we know for sure there was one Democrat because Chris and I both spoke with him. He handed us his business card. His name is George Schaefer. We're giving him free name ID right here.
Yeah.
He's running for state rep down in Jefferson County. Good luck to you. But Chris, I have a note card here. Both sides are filled with questions, and I'm not saying that George handed this in or not because there's no name on it, but maybe this is a connection to him. I didn't get to this, but there's some good questions on here. One of these I'm going to ask Zach Smith when he joins us. So, Chris, you want to hear some of these questions that our one liberal submitted last night?
Go for it.
How was originalism used to reverse Roe v. Wade? That's the first one. How was the reversal of Roe v. Wade, I guess, justified by those of us who believe in originalism?
And I'm not an attorney, and you are, Tim, and we're going to speak with Zach again at 4:24. Those that missed him last night, you can hear him again. But I think the argument that I've heard makes the most sense here is there is no implicit right in the Constitution to be able to kill your baby, is there? Did I miss that? I didn't study the Constitution and the intricacies of it, but is there something tucked in there that gives a person a right to kill an unborn child?
Chris, you're not an attorney, but you stayed in the Holiday Inn Express last night, and you're a smart man you've been listening to a million attorneys your entire life, and you are correct, Chris. That's an easy one to me, but we'll ask Zach about it. My response to that is, Chris, the Roe v. Wade decision, which was maligned by the right and the left, was based upon a completely fabricated, out of whole cloth proposition that there is some mythical right to privacy in the Constitution, which doesn't show me where in the U.S. Constitution it says that there's a right to privacy that therefore then guarantees a woman the right to kill her unborn child.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Supreme Court Justice, was the general counsel for Planned Parenthood, and she said that even though she was pro-choice, she believed that women did have this right. She said that this case was wrongly decided and that somewhere down the quarters of time this is going to be reversed. That quarter of time was 2 years ago, but she foretold this. This case was not decided correctly or constitutionally, and she foretold this.
That's correct. And that is exactly what I based my answer on. Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Tim Jones agreeing on a point. She said that Roe v. Wade was faulty reasoning and was a completely improper decision because it was based on this mythical right of privacy. So I would say, as an originalist, as a strict constructionist, that's exactly why Roe v. Wade should have been reversed. Number two, he asks, unemployment numbers have always excluded those who have stopped looking for work. Why should it be any different now?
I don't understand the question. That is going on, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would, Chris.
They are excluding people that after so many months of not looking for employment or not having any success, they stop counting you.
I think he objected to the fact that Chris, that is true, but see, I object to the premise of his question. Yes, but then the point that Joel Griffith was making last night, if you look at, there's not just one unemployment number. There's a bazillion different unemployment numbers. And if you look at the labor participation rate, then you know that the unemployment rate, you can't just say unemployment is X and that's the end of the story. There's a lot to peel back the onion there, and that's what Joel Griffith did, and that's what you just said is you can't just look at that one number. You have to look at all. There's a lot of numbers involved in people being employed or not employed, and one of them is it all full-time jobs?
Right.
Is it all part-time jobs?
Are they government jobs?
Are they government jobs? Are they people that have quit looking for work? So I think we've answered that one. This is an interesting one, Chris, that I think people on the right and the left have a problem with, and I would argue that this is a problem that the Uniparty, those who just love bigger government, whether you're Republicans or Democrats, through quantitative easing, the Fed has funneled trillions of dollars to financial institutions, resulting in asset inflation. Why does the Heritage Foundation advocate for less government oversight while asset inflation has greatly increased the wealth gap? Well, again, I would object to the premise.
That's a loaded question,
yeah.
And before I can answer that question with any type of knowledge or anything, I'd have to ask him some follow-up questions on the premise of that question.
And Chris, I would argue that even though both parties under whoever they've appointed to the Fed have been responsible for quantitative easing, I would say, sir, both Republican and Democratic administrations have been guilty of quantitative easing. It's on both sides of the aisle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And when you talk about spending, look, both parties have been guilty of excessive spending, from Ronald Reagan on to Donald Trump and everyone in between. The thing that the Democrats and the liberals failed to mention is that Ronald Reagan, yes, he did raise taxes, or not raise taxes, but he did agree to some tax increases into a sense. George H.W. Bush, but they were expecting in return that they would get spending cuts. You know, Ronald Reagan got the massive military buildup, and in return, he was expecting there was going to be some domestic spending cuts as well. There wasn't. That's what cost George H.W. Bush the election when he claimed, when he said at the convention, "Read my lips, no new taxes." Democrats tricked him into a deal that said, if you raise taxes here, we'll cut some spending here. Well, George H.W. Bush kept his end of the bargain. The Democrats didn't. And that's what we see over and over and over, even in the Trump administration. The Democrats are uncontrollable spenders.
That's exactly right. Folks, we're going to ask, we'll ask Zach Smith at 425. He's going to join us. We'll ask him about that Roe v. Wade Dobbs decision, originalism question. And Chris, to follow up on what you just said, yes, Democrats believe in higher taxes, bigger government, and more spending. Conservatives, not necessarily Republicans, but conservatives believe in lower taxes and less spending because there's so many areas. The Democrats believe that government should be involved in every aspect of your life, cradle to grave, if the poor child is lucky enough to be born. And that's what they believe. Republicans believe in the opposite. Chris, there's more. I got more questions. This one, you're going to love the premise of this question. This one's just a hit job. Do you deny that Justice Clarence Thomas, has received largesse and not reported it? Do you deny that?
What is the consider largesse? Gifts from friends of yours that it has been proven or has not been proven that any of these people, and Harlan Crow is who he is speaking with, didn't have any particular business before the court. Just because you are a justice doesn't mean that you can't have wealthy friends or people that want to provide gifts for you. I mean, anyone can make that look shady, look bad, but the record has shown Harlan Crow and these other folks, Alito, those that accepted gifts from wealthy people, they did not have any business before the court.
Well stated.
And they're not in ProPublica, the ones that the group that's trying to expose all of this, don't show the other side of the story where the liberal justices have also received gifts and trips as well, but somehow that doesn't make it into the mainstream media.
I think you answered that one comprehensively. And hey, look at all this airtime we're giving to the liberal point of view here. Yes, we are fair and balanced. The next one's not really a question, it's a statement. I don't know why this is here. Congress did not take us off the gold standard. That was done by Richard Nixon in August of 1971. Okay, fine. That doesn't mean it was any better or worse. Many of us don't like that move.
I don't.
Number 6. Okay, this one, Chris, I vehemently and vigorously object to the premise of this question. How successful was trickle-down economics? First of all, trickle-down economics was never a term that Reagan or Republicans or conservatives used. That was one created to describe Reagan's philosophy that you have to grow government and lower taxes.
And I've always made this argument many times.
I said that wrong. You need to grow the economy. by lowering
And
taxes.
I've made this argument many, many times. How come the Democrats, the liberals, are in favor of trickle-down economics when supposed tax cuts are geared towards the working man and the middle class? They'll tell you that tax cuts to those folks will go to buying groceries, will go to buying food, will go to putting clothes on their children's back. There's a trickle-down economic effect there. But when it comes to people with means or have money, the trickle-down effect doesn't work, and those people just use that money for their own largesse, or they stash it away in some secret Swiss bank account, which is absolutely false. Wealthy people use that money to start businesses and loan that capital to people. Trickle-down economics just doesn't work on the left side of the spectrum and not on the right side of the spectrum.
Exactly.
Economics doesn't play that game.
That's a Keynesian. That's a loaded Keynesian question right there. And again, I will emphasize, neither Reagan nor any Republican ever used the phrase trickle down. That's like, Chris, the Democrats creating the Great Replacement Theory. They created that. They created the theory, they created the words, and then they act like Republicans are the ones who are the racists by pointing out what the Democrats created a name. The Democrats always create things and then they blame other people for them. Every confession with them, every accusation with them is actually a confession.
I just look at the visualization that trickle down gives you. It makes you think that there's a lot of largesse at the top and just a little tiny bit trickles down to the middle class and to the lower people. As we've learned, especially in the internet age, words have a lot of power and meaning nowadays. And trickle down, that's an early use of words to screw up something.
To our author of these questions here, government does not create jobs, it doesn't improve the economy, it only spends taxpayer dollars robbing them from the private sector. Finally, this one, you know what? I can kind of see a right-left alliance on some of this. I don't know that any of us here are big fans of big corporations or giant banks any more than, I don't know that this is a Republican or Democrat thing. It's more of a populist kind of thing. Financial institutions are buying up homes and renting them out, all right? How are young couples supposed to start a family if they cannot outbid financial institutions determined to turn us into a rental nation? He's putting all the blame on the big banks and none of the blame on the massive increase in mortgage rates that have been caused by Joe Biden's massive $1 trillion economic spending.
Exactly, and take that a step further. When interest rates are high and young people can't afford homes, Tim, what do? What did you and your wife do before you were established? I don't know. You may have bought a home right out of college. I don't know. But did you rent an apartment or somewhere first before you saved some money up and went
law school?
So that's what's happening when interest rates are high. Young people can't afford homes. This is a capitalist country. These banks are seeing a market to provide homes for people that can't afford homes right now, rent homes to them. That's all it's all about. The market will correct itself. When interest rates go down, these banks that are buying up these rental homes, they'll probably sell them.
Maybe don't have the federal government pump $7 trillion of fake, phony, borrowed Chinese money into the economy. We wouldn't be in this situation. And secondly, what is the alternative to this, Chris? It's to have a centralized government run the housing sector, which is exactly what Democrats want. And then guess what we are? Venezuela.
Yeah, we see them wanting to impose that where places that are zoned suburban areas, they want to change the zoning in these areas so that lower income people can move into nicer areas so that everything is quote unquote equal. We've seen that push among liberals the last few years. So, these people, when it all comes down to social experimentation, I think a lot of them, I'm not going to say all of them, a lot of them have good intentions, but with a lot of things they do, they don't think it 2 and 3 moves down the line. And one of my favorite sayings that Sherman Parker told me, play chess, not checkers. Liberals play checkers.
Yes, there you go, folks. We love our liberals here. We just gave one of them 20 minutes of airtime. Don't say we're not fair and balanced.
And he's losing his mind on Facebook and Twitter. Dan Schaefer is yelling, "My name's not George."
Oh, sorry.
George.
Sorry. I don't know why I had George in my head. Maybe I was thinking George Washington. Maybe I was elevating him. Sorry, Dan. Dan Schaefer is the Democratic fellow running for state representative. And Dan, in all seriousness, We're going to have a different point of view on you than you, but we thank you for coming to our event. We thank you for engaging in the process. And you know what? We admire you for running for office. And so thank you very much. We love all our liberal listeners, and we just gave him 20 minutes every time. Dan Schaefer. There we go.
He actually admitted that we probably have more in common than we do than our differences.
Exactly.
And,